Welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. Today we'll be speaking about a cause that is a priority to the whole Middle East, a cause that has been one of the forefront causes Egypt has been adopting since very, very long time. And out of its responsibility, Egypt has gone through some of the efforts in order to revive the stalemate in the Palestinian-Israeli peace negotiations. A quartet committee between the foreign ministers of Egypt, France, Germany and Jordan will convene in Cairo this week to discuss the ways of reviving the peace negotiations between the Palestinians and the Israelis after it was suspended in 2014. This quartet was established in February 2020 on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry has already held talks with the foreign ministers of those countries, particularly with the Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad Al-Malki and the Israeli Gabi Ashkenazi. Sameh Shoukry also held some of the other phone calls with his French and German counterparts who are going to participate in this quartet in order to observe how the negotiations would go. Why now? Because the Palestinian cause has always been at the core of every problem to the Middle East. Why now? Because Egypt has always thought that preparing for a conducive atmosphere for such talks would be of great beneficial not only to the two sides but also to the whole Middle East. We'll be speaking about that in our episode and more. Before we delve into our discussion, first let's have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week and we'll come back.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received Kuwaiti Foreign Minister Sheikh Ahmed Nasser al-Sabah. During the meeting, al-Sabah delivered a message from Kuwaiti Emir Sheikh Nawaf al-Ahmed al-Jaber to the head of state. The message highlighted the strong relations between the two brotherly nations concerning the reconciliation efforts. President al-Sisi expressed his sincerest appreciation and support for the Kuwaiti efforts over the past years to achieve the reconciliation, which has begun with serious efforts of late Emir Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed al-Jaber al-Sabah and continued by Sheikh Nawaf al-Ahmed al-Sabah. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received a telephone call from Jordanian King Abdullah II. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said that the call tackled the latest regional developments, particularly the Palestinian cause, as well as ways to boost the distinguished relations between the two brotherly nations. Radi added that the two leaders agreed on the importance of intensifying work on the regional and international levels to resolve the stalemate in the Middle East peace process and push forward efforts to get the negotiations back on track. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry discussed with his Palestinian and Israeli counterparts preparations ahead of the quartet meeting, which is due to be held in the coming days. Shoukry had a telephone call with Israeli Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenaz within the framework of the upcoming meeting, which will gather Egypt, Jordan, France and Germany. The top diplomat held another telephone call with Palestinian President Riyad Al-Maliki in light of Egypt's continuous efforts to reach a comprehensive and just settlement for the Palestinian issue. Syrian air defense forces responded late on Wednesday to Israeli aggression in the south of the country. Citing a military source, the Syrian state news agency said that Israel launched missiles in the air attack from the disputed Golan Heights at around 11 p.m. local time. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights later said that the Israeli strikes caused death and injuries but did not give details. It also added that the Israeli raids targeted several Iranian militias positions south of Damascus and came 2 days after a delegation of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard visited the area. Saudi Arabia on Sunday announced the reopening of borders and the resumption of international flights after a 2-week suspension aimed to stem the spread of a new coronavirus strain. The government ordered the lifting of precautionary measures related to the spread of a new variant of coronavirus. According to the Ministry of Interior, Saudi Arabia has recorded more than 363,000 cases, including over 6,200 deaths, the highest among the Gulf Arab states. Riyadh suspended international flights and access through land crossings and ports on December 21st. Other Gulf countries, Oman and Kuwait, who had taken similar measures, have also lifted them in recent days. UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffith, will visit Yemen and Saudi Arabia in the next few days to meet with the Yemeni president and senior Saudi officials following an attack on Aden airport last week. Attacks on the southern port city of Aden on 30th of December killed at least 22 people as officials in a government backed by Riyadh arrived there. Arab-led coalition warplanes then retaliated by striking targets in Yemen's Houthi-held capital Sana'a the next day.
Right, welcome back and back to our topic, and to shed light on this issue and on the developments in the Middle East, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, Ambassador Bayoumi.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. And we're speaking here about a quartet meeting that will be taking place in Egypt. Why has Egypt put that timing precisely to start with such negotiations or to resume such talks?
Frankly, I don't give big attention to the timing, because we are engaged all the time. Every day we are engaged in our relation with our main dimension of our foreign relation, which is the Arab dimension. So we are there whenever we need. Now, because we have the privilege of very good technology that we can call, we can make video conferences every day. If you follow our foreign policy activities from the presidential level or the ministerial level or the ambassadorial level, it is very, very active. The result is quite clear. So I think that we need consultation all the time because of the developments on the Palestinian question, of what is going in Syria, in Lebanon, in Libya, in Yemen, what is going on in the Gulf, the normalization with Israel, and the conference concerning the Gulf Cooperation Council. All these subjects are very important to us, and we follow it from hour to hour, not on daily basis even.
Mm-hmm. So if we're not speaking about the timing, then we're speaking about the conducive time for such talks. How far do you think, as far as you spoke of the points that you here spoke about, how do you see a conducive atmosphere for those talks to resume?
I am always satisfied whenever the dialogue is continuing. As long as the dialogue is continuing, either between alliances or even between partners or even competitors to our policy, then it's much better than silence or being silent. I think if the dialogue is continuing, then something is happening. And at least, the least you can get from such meetings, that each party will be aware of what the others are doing or thinking even. So I think this is important, and I think Egypt and the Egyptian diplomacy is very clever to continue the dialogue with all the parties, whether in the Arab dimension, the European, Palestinian, whoever we need to talk. We are keen and we are able to talk frankly. We have a very active policy and quite clear, respected by the whole world. So the subject also is there, and the foreign policy of Egypt is doing well.
Right. If you spoke about several dimensions, and we're speaking about a conducive atmosphere. So let me take here your reading to the developments in the Middle East that would really help or go in favor of those talks to succeed.
I think we, in the Arab world and the Middle East especially, we are suffering from a sort of very bad environment. Many Arab countries are engaged in something almost, you can call it civil war, or attacked by other countries, occupied by our neighbors. So we are not in a very good health as Arabs to talk there. Here it comes the role of countries in the size of Egypt or the Gulf countries or Algeria, who is relatively in better condition. And we have to continue the dialogue between Egypt and those who can move. And we are keen, of course, to take the Palestinian question everywhere of our contacts in order to make sure that the situation is not deteriorated. We assure to all the parties, even the Israelis, that we are not happy with what is happening in the Palestinian territories. Thank God that many countries of our groups of contacts are in our favor. Take the European position, take the Asian position, whether it's Japanese or Chinese, take the African position, which is very good towards the Palestinian question. Mind you that Palestine is a member in the meetings of Africa, although Palestine is not African. This means that even the African countries are keen to see good results of the efforts in order to solve the Palestinian question, or at least to make sure that the Palestinian people are living the minimum, which is they are asking for their life.
But we have seen some steps or some change in the Middle East, and some would see those steps positive and in favor of the developments in the Middle East, or in favor of moving with the situation in a positive way. How do you read that?
I am optimistic, but reserved optimism. What I saw lately in the meeting of the Group 20 in Mecca, the group, the Arab of the Gulf plus Egypt in Al-Ula, it should be positive. But I take this with some reservation, because I want not declarations. I want what is going on the ground, what I will watch tomorrow in some television channels. I will wait for what the finance from some small Arab countries to the terrorism. This is not yet assured that we are in a situation where I can congratulate ourselves. Not yet, and we have to wait and see here. But of course, the dialogue is going on. The meetings are there. It means that at least we can talk to each other, and this is the least we can ask.
When we speak about developments, then we have to say that Egypt has always been the voice of wisdom when it comes to some of the strategic movements or the diplomatic movements. How far has Egypt played as the wise voice for the region?
As a matter of fact, we were clever all the time in the foreign trade dimension also. I think, you know, of course, that it was a choice of Gamal Abdel Nasser in 1970 to join the General Agreement on Tax and Trade. Then it was our decision later on during President Sadat's time, when we joined the Arab dimension of trade, the African dimension of trade, and the most difficult which is the European Union and the association agreement. And all these efforts are small stories of success. Our trade with Europe, especially our exports, has increased 4 times. With Africa, the same thing. With the Arab world, but with Africa and the Arab world, we are in a much better situation because the trade deficit is, we have a trade surplus with those 2 partners. Europe, of course, is there helping us in investment, in development assistance, and the same with the Arab world. We are doing quite well with Africa. We call our partners in Europe, in China and Japan to invest in Africa with the Egyptian experience, which is a very good idea accepted by the world. Now we are becoming more and more a country which can export energy, whether it is electricity, gas, or oil. And the European Union is encouraging this position of Egypt, and Egypt will play the role of exporter of electricity by establishing a line between Egypt and Greece. We shall be also exporter of gas. We shall be the country which will liquidate the gas because we have a surplus of energy there. So I think we are doing well, although many countries are suffering from the economic results of the epidemic COVID-19. But we are doing well, but not well enough. It is good, but not as you would ask for or I would ask for.
Ambassador Bayoumi, this quartet meeting or this trial from Egypt to revive the stalemate in the peace negotiations come at the backdrop of few announcements that were made recently and the upcoming or the new U.S. president assuming office. So how?
Yes, we have. Yes.
Please.
Please.
How, from your point of view, are those changing factors reflecting or affecting or would be affecting such negotiations?
I think it's well known that Egypt is one of the oldest civilizations of the world. It's well known also that the United States is a very stable country with policy where you can talk to. I think that Egypt and the United States, since President Eisenhower and President Gamal Abdel Nasser discovered quite clear that each party, America and Egypt, are partners in many, many things. And the positive relations, the positive elements of the relation between Egypt and the United States is much more than the negative one. So we are working on this, and I think whatever the American administration will be, they know these facts, and they will try to continue good cooperation with Egypt. And we are trying to use this for the sake of the Palestinian question. Because even those who are very friendly to Israel, they do not see any future for Israel unless they recognize the two-state solution, that they try to make their relation with their immediate neighbors. I'm talking here about Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, and Egypt. They have to respect their immediate border relations there. And without this, I don't see good future even for the Israeli state. This is not my words. It is the words of those who are keen to see Israel continue and to make sure that the Israeli future is in good situation. So here I feel confident that we have all the time. We can wait for years and years and make sure that the question is in our favor, that we shall be in a better situation day after another, because I think that any wise Israeli or wise friend to Israel should discover immediately that Israel now, in this moment, is not going according to good policy or good politics in order to make sure that Israel will remain a safe country.
The Palestinian cause has always been or has always seen a kind of ups and downs and rise in it as in the core of priorities for Arab states, and then came after or came in next places according to the developments that are occurring in the Arab world. How far that the developments that are occurring in the Middle East, I'm not speaking now about the developments in Libya or the situation in Syria, but rather the whole developments, the whole Arab scene, the whole developments that have been ongoing starting the last few months and up till this month in 2021. How far do you think that the Palestinian cause, or it's time for the Palestinian cause to rise again and be at the core of the Arab problems?
Of course, we talked about the whole picture about the Arab world and what is happening in some countries like Syria or Libya. But let us talk about the Palestinian question. First, the Palestinian question is in the core of our foreign policy, not because of sort of brotherly feelings, but because it is a very important thing for the Egyptian national security. Mind you that Ahmus, the ruler of Egypt, he went up till Laziqiyah in Syria to defend it. So it's not today, it's all the time Egypt is defending this part of our neighborhood. And now we have two problems with the Palestinian question. First, that you never had recently a government in Israel which you can make a sort of a real peace treaty or a peace solution. They are divided, they are greedy, and of course there are some sort of policies trying to make use of this. On the Palestinian side also we have a problem. The division between Hamas and the PLO is something which stopped us all the time to continue doing our job concerning peaceful negotiations. Hamas is not ready to talk to the PLO and to recognize the PLO as the leader of the Palestinian Authority. So we have problems on both sides. Until every side can get a leadership who can accept a peace solution, I think we have to wait.
Right. I think remains to be seen how the quartet negotiations develop here in Egypt this week. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former assistant foreign minister, thank you so much for being with us over the phone. Before we move on with our discussion, let's first have this quick report and we'll come back for more discussion.
Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry on Wednesday spoke on the phone with his Israeli counterpart Gabi Ashkenazi to prepare for a meeting between Egypt, Jordan, France and Germany aimed at advancing peace efforts between Palestine and Israel in coordination with the United States. Shoukry also made a phone call to Palestine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Riyad al-Maliki, to discuss the Palestinian cause. In meeting with Maliki and Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi in December, the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi assured that the Palestinian issue was a constant priority for Egypt. He stressed that efforts are still continuing to restore the Palestinian people to their legitimate rights and establish their independent state according to the international legitimacy references, whilst taking into account recent global and regional changes. The president also stressed on the importance of uniting Arab and international efforts to move effectively during the coming period to reactivate peace talks and overcome prior challenges. The upcoming conference comes as Israel continues to build illegal settlements in the Palestinian-controlled West Bank, a move that was condemned in December by Shukri. Peace Now, an Israeli group that surveils settlement activity, reported settlement construction in 2020 to be at its highest since 2012.
Right, welcome back. And to continue on with our discussion, we have with us over the phone Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, political analyst. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Ghaffar.
Thank you. Good afternoon, my dear.
Good afternoon to you. And we're speaking here about an anticipated quartet meeting that will take place to discuss the Palestinian cause. How far or how do you view the Egyptian role regarding the Palestinian cause since the very beginning?
I mean, there's no country on earth that was involved and suffered from the Palestinian crisis like Egypt. I mean, we have been there for them since 1948, and we have never let them down through the years, and we incurred a lot of, I should say, sacrifices for the Palestinian people. You see, the Palestinian crisis is one of the constants of the foreign policy, Egyptian foreign policy, and we cannot change that. And over the years, it will still remain as one of the pillars of the our foreign policy, and we have tried repeatedly to work something out for the Palestinian people over the last 70 plus years, and so far no big success yet, but we always aspire to changing the status quo and maybe reach a sort of just solution for the Palestinian people.
Right. Definitely Egypt has been all the time working and doing unwavering efforts in order to reach some or a satisfactory, yes, indeed, a satisfactory end to such discussions or an end to the stalemate in the Palestinian cause. From your point of view, do you see any kind of relevance to the timing Egypt chose to hold this quartet in Cairo and the developments that are ongoing in the Middle East?
Of course, the situation, particularly these days, is changing. I'm talking on the ground. We know Egypt was the pioneer in establishing peace with Israel some 40 years ago, and we actually, at the time, invited everybody to come and join. Had they done that, the situation, but anyway, let's not talk about the past and let's look forward. We have seen changes happening over the last weeks. The rapprochement between the State of Israel and some of the leading Arab countries, and this means that the situation is improving, and the Arab world is now looking at the situation pragmatically, and they are looking for their interest. So this is what is happening. That is why Egypt, as you said, we are always having relentless efforts toward this crisis, but we see that this is maybe a good time for the Palestinians to come to their senses, I should say that, and sit and work something out before it's too late, in my opinion. So now the ground is prepared and the environment is better, I should say, than years ago. So I think that first of all, the Palestinian people should have an understanding between their two main factions, and maybe realize, I'm talking about Hamas now, that the interference of foreign countries in their affairs is not to their benefit. And so the Palestinian people should get together, and this time is a good time to sit on the negotiation table and try and reach a long-awaited solution and settlement to this crisis.
Why, or from your point of view, why would a Palestinian-Israeli solution to the peace negotiation or to the stalemate in the peace negotiation would be in favor of both sides from one side and the Middle East on the other hand, and maybe even for Europe and other foreign powers?
Our president said that repeatedly, and he repeated it when he was meeting with the Treasury Minister, American Treasury Minister. He said that the Palestinian crisis is the most important crisis in the world now, and I think it is the essence of the peace. And in his opinion, and in our opinion, and everybody's opinion, if this problem or crisis is settled, I'm sure we will see no more fanatism, we will see no more terrorism, and of course this does not reflect only on the area, on the two countries, but it will reflect on the region and on the whole world. And I think that everybody understands this, and that is why we need to have this situation changed. We have been working in the peace path for 40 years, trying to convince the Palestinians to join, and we will keep on doing that until they do. So I repeat, as you rightly said, if this crisis is settled and a just settlement is reached, accepted by both sides, I'm sure that the situation on the ground will much will better, and we will see no more. As I said, we will see more security, more stability, not only in the area but in the whole world. And this is what we all aspire to, of course.
Right. Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, political analyst, we thank you so much for being with us and for your input here. I guess that takes us to the end of our episode of Arab Affairs. Next week would be another important Arab file. Until next week, it's goodbye.